Good morning from Ayr in Scotland. I'm joined here by Niven Rennie.
Hi.
Niven, good morning to you.
Good morning, Bernard.
And we're just outside the Burns Monument and Gardens here in Ayr. Well, you say it's Alloway, I think.
Alloway, yes, where Robert Burns was born.
So, a fascinating discussion that we've been having already about Burns and the link with the violence reduction units.
Well, Burns grew up in poverty, and a lot of his poetry was written about poverty. And therefore there's a connection, because I think underlying a lot of our social issues, including violence, is this issue of poverty and the fact that we need to be a more compassionate society.
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to walk through here, and we're going to into the Burns Monument and Gardens. And let's properly start though by we've known each other a few years now. I can't remember exactly how many, but
well, at least about 8 or 9, I should think. Yeah.
And we first met when you were the president of ASPS, the Association of Scottish Police Superintendents, which you came at having joined Strathclyde Police originally, and then into Police Scotland.
1985 I joined Strathclyde Police, a long time ago now. I did.
And now you've taken on responsibility as lead, as chair, is it, of the
director,
Scottish
director of Scottish Violence Reduction Unit. I've been doing that for almost 4 years now.
And the Scottish Violence Reduction Unit, really the pathfinder for all the work that the violence reduction units have done.
Well, it was formed by John Carnachan and Karen McCluskey in 2005, and at that time Scotland had a huge violence problem. We had a title that nobody would want to have, was the murder capital of Europe, Glasgow, the most violent country in the developed world. We had 137 murders in 2005, which is not huge in global terms, but when your population is 5 million, it is a significant number. So in truth, it's been going on for generations. You go back and Razor Gangs and the Gorbals. It was a very famous occasion when Frankie Vaughan, the singer, came to sing in Glasgow. He was shocked at the violence. He asked the young men to stop killing each other. And the response by the police, and right through my service, Operation Blade, Spotlight Initiative, it was high-level stop and search, seizing weapons, putting them on display, calling for tougher sentences, throw away the key. It doesn't work.
I remember it's from 10, 12, 15 years ago.
It doesn't work.
Real problems there.
What you do is you suppress the issue. You don't deal with the underlying causes of violence. And so people would come out of prison, pick up where they left off, or were still, their siblings would get involved in the violence. And it was largely territorial in Glasgow at that time. Neighbouring streets forming gangs and fighting with each other. And John and Karen took a different approach, supported by Sir Willie Ray.
2005, this is a big problem.
And so they took, 2004, the World Health Organization produced this report that said that violence was a public health issue. And John and Karen took that and started to address it as a public health issue, asking why rather than what. And that was a unique difference that happened there. And to a certain extent, all that's flowing from there continues along these lines. What I think was sometimes lost sight of is the fact it's a public health issue, because every time there's a spike in violence or violence goes up, we're still turning to the police and saying, what are you doing about this? Police sort of people in front of the camera to answer for the spike in violence, and therefore we go back to that old process of searching, and I think largely that's where we are in England to a certain extent. And we've lost that important message that's more than just policing, it's more than just justice.
I'd just like to understand a little bit more. It was set up by these two individuals in 2005, with funding from where? Because you need funding in order to.
In 2005, the funding came from Strathclyde Police, 100% funded by Strathclyde Police, and then in 2007-8. The Liberal coalition government in the Scottish Parliament decided that it should be the Scottish Violence Reduction Unit, and they gave 50% funding at that point. And then in 2013, when the National Police Force in Scotland was formed, the Scottish Government then started funding in full the VRU.
So that's how things were set up. It's now established very much a reputation as probably, I'd say almost certainly, the foremost violence reduction unit worldwide, and with offshoots with new initiatives coming along in London, in the Met, in a number of different force areas in England, with money from the Home Office provided to police and crime commissioners.
Yeah, we were very much involved in the setting up of the London VRU. Sadiq Khan and his team contacted us at that time, and Will Linden, one of my team, sat on the steering group that set up the London VRU until Lib Peck was appointed, and then we dropped out. Thereafter, the Home Office came in and funded 17 VRUs in England and Wales. My own personal view is I think 17 is too many. I think part of the problem is the force structures down there. The Police and Crime Commissioners, a number of forces, so you end up with very small units. I would have probably done it on a regional basis if I were designing it. The other thing that is unfortunate is we are very much seen as an innovative unit, so we try projects out, try different ways of tackling violence, and if they work, we leave them with another organisation. For example, our Mentors in Violence Prevention educational programme is now delivered in full by Education Scotland. We no longer deliver that programme. Similarly, our Hospital Navigator programme is now delivered in full by Medics Against Violence. We've moved on to other things. What they've done in England to a certain extent is give a short-term level of funding, which means many of the VRUs in England and Wales are largely procuring services, and when you do that with short-term funding, you can't really plan for the long term because you don't know if the money's going to be there next year. It makes it very difficult. So there is a distinctive difference between our approach and that being adopted.
So one key difference then, the continuity. The violence reduction unit here in Scotland knows that you will be here for an extended period, within reason, whereas in England the funding is more short-term.
So we've been going for 17 years. Like most political funded organisations, it tends to be year to year, but we've always had the support of the Scottish Government, and I can't see that stopping in the short term. So all my planning is for long-term projects, whereas I don't know that consistency of approach is there.
The other element that strikes me about your remarks there, Niven, is on the innovation side, where as I understand it, the Scottish Violence Reduction Unit, you act as a sort of almost like a seed corn, an incubator for these ideas, whereas the impression I'm getting is that in England, with the approach that's being used there, it is being more short term. It doesn't have quite the opportunity to have some that might work, some that might fail, and actually to have that support.
I think
for
if
the
I was
medium to long term.
being critical, that's what I said. There are some good examples of innovative work going on in England as well, and my hope is that by having 19 violence reduction units in the UK, that we can all give each other ideas and we can all feed off each other. We've not reached that stage yet, and I think largely it's the way that it's structured south of the border, although I've made some very strong contacts with the directors and elsewhere, and I mentioned to you a short time ago when we started filming, the Hope Collective is an organisation I'd like to talk about, which is built on the VRU model, and maybe give us that. But one of the criticism I hear often down south is, well, it worked in Scotland, but I don't know if it'll work down here. But actually, a lot of our programmes we've stolen from elsewhere, taken a lot of them from America, and then adapted them for Scotland. So these projects do travel.
Isn't this a sort of part of the secret of success, that it's all very well inventing something completely new, but the more that you can pick up good and excellent practice from elsewhere, and maybe tweak it, maybe adapt it to local circumstances, then the better.
So to us, it's sort of proving that people who get involved in violence shouldn't just be thrown away by society. That you can, out of a violent upbringing, you can actually turn people around, and we've done that through so many of our projects. And what I find is that a lot of the young men who get involved in violence, I don't know if I can do that. Shall we try that?
We'll give it a try.
A lot of young men who get involved in violence, they've grown up in chaotic homes. They've grown up with a lack of hope, lack of opportunity, lack of aspiration, so they've not had any positive role models in their lives. They've not had the opportunities you and I have had. And given that opportunity, given that chance, that support that they need, you can see them change in front of your very eyes, and that to me is one of the most fantastic things about being involved in the VRU, is to see these young men that society had largely disregarded become, you know, fully functioning contributors to society.
So the metaphor may not be wholly appropriate, for which apologies, but rather than pulling people out of the river downstream, it's getting upstream and actually discovering why it is that they're falling in the river in the first place.
Exactly. So the one that we use, John Carnican did this one before, but you know, if people are falling off cliffs, would you better have a fleet of ambulances at the bottom to take them to hospital, or build a fence to stop them falling? And it's the same idea. Getting upstream. So John very famously said we don't need more police officers, we need more social workers, and that, it got a bit of a backlash in the police about that. I can understand what he was saying. Really, you have to start, you know, giving people a more stable upbringing, a better start in life, and you know, we talk about the big thing in Scotland just now, rather than being violence, is drug deaths. We've got a huge problem with drug deaths in Scotland, and there's a lot of work being done on that. But what we're doing is really what you've just described there, is pulling people out of the water. We're bringing in naloxone, we're looking at clean places to take drugs, changing the law. The question is not being asked is, why are people taking drugs? And if you look at all of our social problems, violence, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, gambling addiction, poor educational outcomes, poor health outcomes, it's our poorer communities that suffer the most. In every chart you've got, most recently COVID, if you look at the COVID statistics, it's the poorer communities that have the worst outcomes. So surely with that understanding, by addressing the problem of poverty, will bring about improvement in all these other measures, and that is exactly where the VRU are just now.
Can I just turn our attention to wider issues? So, acknowledging that helping individuals to get their lives back on track is good for society and good for the individuals concerned, and not something that you can do overnight.
No.
So you need the long-term view on this. I do remember reading that part of the success of the violence reduction unit actually did rely on things like stop and search. So what's your feelings on stop and search? So
in the very early days, when the violence was at its height, I just described earlier, you have to stop people losing their lives. That's the first thing. So that element of suppression is necessary. I mean, police powers of search and seizure are not there on a whim. They're there for a reason, because people are losing their lives. So that, when you're losing lives on an industrial scale as Scotland was over a period of time, it's wholly appropriate that you take these measures in the areas where young people are losing their lives. Stop that happening. But that's not a long-term solution. So to a certain extent, it went hand in glove with the public health approach. So carrot and stick, if you like. We ran a programme between 2008 and 2012, which came from Boston ceasefire. We called it Community Interaction to Reduce Violence. It's since been successfully applied in Northamptonshire. And we used information that we held about people who were involved in gangs to bring them to the Sheriff Court in Glasgow, where they were given a series of presentations. A sheriff talking about the fact that they end up dead or end up in prison for the rest of their lives, a mother talking about losing their child to gang violence, former gang member saying how his life had been wasted, and then finally we gave them an opportunity. Here's a telephone number, if you phone this number, we'll lift you out of where you're living. And we found that most people involved in gang violence didn't want to. They drifted into it for the reasons I've said earlier, and they were living their life in fear that they might be the next person that was going to be attacked. So if you wish, that was a carrot. It was there to say, look, you come to take this opportunity, we'll change your life. Alongside that was a high level of police enforcement, and that was a stick. And I think that broke the back of the gang violence in Glasgow the way we saw it for generations. And most of the people that we dealt with actually took the carrot. They wanted the opportunity to get into education, get a job.
They needed that opportunity.
They
They couldn't find that for themselves, but
So
given the opportunity.
We stole from America a slogan from Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles. You'll see there's a pattern developing here, Bernard. But we stole it from Homeboy Industries, the slogan, nothing.
I'm sure they wouldn't feel it was stealing. They'd be delighted. They'd be delighted that you took it on board as well.
Nothing stops a bullet like a job. And actually, people given employment, given hope, given opportunity, given aspiration, that's where people want to be. Nobody wants to live their life in fear, expecting that you're going to be the next person to be stabbed. And really, that understanding has been the basis of a lot of the stuff that we've done in the VRU over the years.
I think that's a good point, Niven, at which to just scan around this beautiful location. But then I do want to return to, a little earlier on you were saying you were hoping, Bernard, that we would
the
come...
Hope Collective.
So let's come back to that. But let's I'm just going to scan the camera around. Fortunately, we're not going to get run over here because there are bollards. But look at this.
This is the old brick.
Talk us through this. So
Tam O'Shanter, in Robert Burns' famous poem Tam O'Shanter.
The bridge itself.
The bridge itself. Tam comes over the bridge on his horse and he's chased by the witches and they rip off the horse's tail. This is where that happened.
Well,
Very historic.
Fascinating, and it's an absolutely beautiful setting.
Yeah.
The elements, the weather's being kind on us in that we're not just at the moment being rained upon, but of course the beauty of the environment, of the whole area does depend on there being more than a drop of rain just to give us the greenery and such like.
It does. But I'm very fortunate. I live just a mile from here. Very fortunate to live in this area. It's beautiful.
So tell us about the
Hope
initiative.
Collective. So this came from the Damiola Taylor Trust in London. Damiola Taylor being a young boy who lost his life 20 years ago in the streets of Peckham, and the Damiola Taylor Trust has a day of hope every year on his birthday, 7th of December, and John Carn and I were asked to go and speak at it 2 or 3 years ago now. The CEO of that's a chap called Gary Trousdale, and Gary had a vision to have violence reduction units in England and Wales. He actually started that ball rolling because he got politicians in England to have a parliamentary commission on youth violence just a few years ago, and it recommended violence reduction units be created. So based on that, he approached me and asked me if I would chair a UK-wide organisation on the VRU network, which is called the Hope Collective, and we've got other big players in it. We've got the Co-op, we've got the National Citizenship Service, UK Youth, a number of big organisations involved. But the idea is that we create a platform through which we give young people a voice, and we portray a far better image than is often portrayed about young people. And the hashtag we use is changing the narrative, and it's about letting young people have a say about what hope means for them, what their aspirations are. And we've only just been going a year, but we're getting bigger all the time, and we hope to provide a platform which will influence decision makers to follow the thoughts and aspirations of young people. And this year we'll be releasing a report called Reimagined, and that Reimagined will be looking at all of our social issues and giving the perspective of young people. So to me it's quite groundbreaking.
So this work originated in 2005 in Scotland,
yeah,
to address a particular problem, and it's grown. To my mind, there is no question that the Violence Reduction Unit is the foremost such unit anywhere that I've seen in the world. The Hope Initiative also, potential there, it seems to me, for that to gain traction not just in the UK but potentially further afield as well.
Potentially. We tend to look at young people as if they were the problem, and they're not the problem. Young people are our hope for the future. We need to give them that aspiration, that opportunity.
On that note, the hope for the future, I think that's a perfect place, Niven, to wrap up this conversation. It's been a great delight to visit you here in Ayr, and there are many other lines that we could pursue. I do hope we'll have a chance in due course to do that, but I'm just going to pan the camera around and look forward to meeting you again, perhaps even in this most glorious setting.
You're very welcome.